Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the 19th audio file in the audiocast series known as the Q News Patriot. I am the Q News Patriot. My name is SGAnon. It is good to be back with you this evening after we've had quite a number of days apart. I've been quite active on the TruthSocial platform over these last few days. Tonight, we're going to go ahead and get right to it. As I stated earlier today on TruthSocial, there's not going to be a really groundbreaking intel tonight from behind the scenes or any updates that are about events in progress. I had something about 2 days ago that I thought I was able to share with you all, but circumstances changed. And so that something was no longer applicable to share. Yesterday evening, I had actually begun recording this particular file where we were just going to do a couple of decodes and talk and speculate and really kind of examine things from a broad point of view. And of course, I told each of you on TruthSocial what happened. So I do apologize for the back and forth and for the delay. There's simply just so much happening right now in all of the avenues of this epic war that is being fought silently, but not silently. So without too much further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into some things. Tonight, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to do a couple of things different, actually. This particular series has expanded far, far beyond the point that I ever believed it was going to expand. I am so grateful for the trust and admiration that each of you place. I understand that it is not easily won, and it's certainly not easily given. We are living in the greatest, or one of the greatest stories that will ever be told for humankind, that will go many hundreds of years into the future. And so being able to reach those of you out there with this series is one of the greatest, it's one of the greatest accomplishments of my life. I appreciate each of you. We're going to do something a little different tonight because this series has gotten much more exposure than I believed it would. We're going to break down a little bit of how some of the Anons interpret and go through things. We're going to do a little bit of decoding in real time. I'm going to walk through a decode with you all of one of the comms from the commander-in-chief. We're going to have a look at some open source information that is out there for you to find. You simply have to hop on those search engines and get clever with your terms and your filters. Make sure to filter your results for recent results, or depending on which time period you're looking for, maybe the last 2 years. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about where we go from here and how we keep our spirits high and our feet light. And so, and I said without further ado a moment ago, but this time genuinely without further ado, let's move along. So the first thing we're going to talk about tonight is a little bit of open source information, because I can get to it fairly quickly. It doesn't take me very long. We're going to come over here to an article published today by a fantastic group called the Gateway Pundit. The Gateway Pundit is Gateway Pundit, I believe to be is a mostly credible news source, despite what is given to us through our MK Ultra programming and the reiteration and reinforcing of certain themes throughout our media and entertainment diets. The Gateway Pundit reports a tremendous amount of truth. They are occasionally mistaken, but I'm occasionally mistaken, more than occasionally mistaken. And so are most even credible agencies out there. Circumstances oftentimes, especially if you have really good watchers, there's reporting that occurs before those circumstances have fully cemented themselves for what they are. sometimes the reporting can be so fast when things are coming out that maybe the dust hasn't fully settled on what exactly is even being reported. So this particular article today report Biden's DOJ believes there is enough evidence to bring obstruction of justice charges against President Trump. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Trump prosecutors have seen enough evidence to bring obstruction charges, but the path to an actual indictment is far from clear. Interesting how they're setting up this Trump arrest narrative. We did a decode several files back. It was within the first 5 or 6 files, I believe, where we talked about the 503rd Military Police Detachment and the signal from Q that it would be POTUS 45 that was going to be involved in this arrest narrative publicly. It remains, that particular post, I believe, is 30, I don't remember, 3716 maybe, or 3717. You all would have to go back and double check me, but it was the only post that Q sent twice at the exact same timestamp down to the second. There is no bigger way to silently emphasize something than to align the exact moment, that exact second in time, and duplicate that to get people's attention. I think that the 45 arrest, however it happens, is being set up in the public space. It has been set up, or been getting set up in the public space, the narrative space, especially with the MSM, for the better part of a couple of weeks now. So expect to see some things, coming down the pike with that. I would imagine, based on what we're seeing right now with the Durham trial and different judicial issues going on in DC as it relates to this J6 committee, I believe that it's probably going to be this committee that initiates this whole arrest of 45 or indictment of 45, or however they're going to do it. So I thought that was very fascinating today. A couple other things I found very fascinating today, which are also open source, and you have to go and find a little bit of connection for them. We had some updates come out of the war front in Ukraine. In the territory of Ukraine near Kiev, a case of anthrax infection was detected. If you recall, last year, one of the American military biological labs that was located in the territory of Kiev was identified by the Russians through some of their paperwork hauls that they made from other laboratories. So that's an interesting crossover. We had the German president today canceled his visit to Kiev for security reasons. He's rescheduled the visit for Thursday. We've talked a little bit about the Russia-Ukraine conflict, but I don't know if we've really truly understood how this conflict is going to sort of snowball into an all-encompassing thing in Europe. And I'm not saying that there's going to be rockets flying across borders and things like that in Europe, but what I'm saying is, because of the nature of the entrenchment that Russia and Belarus here very soon, and China already, are rooting out in the Ukrainian countryside and in that area of the world, what has been, ancestrally called Khasaria. That entrenchment affects every sect and avenue of society, not just in Europe, but in all of the world. All of the world's pharmaceutical research and development goes through Kiev. A great deal of the world's medical research for like miscellaneous purposes is done in Ukraine. The Ukrainian countryside is basically Swiss cheese underneath it, with the just the sheer vast levels of tunnels and underground military bases that they have stored there and created there. These people have had nearly 1,000 years to entrench themselves in the countryside that Putin is now steamrolling with the Russian army. And so understand that the war in Europe, because it's going to expand outward, at least in the underground war, is going to expand outward across some national boundary lines. It's going to absolutely expand across boundary lines in the business, financial, and energetic spaces. And so things like fuel, raw materials, currencies being supported by various banks that are failing or falling finally publicly, companies that are going bankrupt, like we saw in Germany just a couple of days ago, and very old companies, hundreds of years old in some cases, or over 100 years old, excuse me, in some cases. The war in Europe is going to, or the war in Eastern Europe right now, the physical war is going to get much worse in the metaphysical, intangible dimensions first in Western Europe. We're going to see the governments of at least a couple of European countries, large governments, are going to collapse under their own weight and under their own strain. The German economy in particular, which is the largest industrial economy in Europe, is very near collapse right now. And so understand that as Putin and Belarus and this joint coalition go in and finish the job and occupy the country of Ukraine, and that is what is coming, by the way, the country of Ukraine will be occupied. The nature of that occupation, I am not privy to, but I can tell you that when this is over, there will not be a country of Ukraine. There will be a defeated New World Order Kabbalist stronghold, and we will decide what to do with the criminals against humanity at that point. As this process goes on, everyone in the governments in Central and Western Europe that is involved in the oil corruption and the bureaucratic corruption and the COVID-19 crime against humanity vaccine, which we're going to talk about here shortly. These individuals are looking at their future is being shown to them right in front of them. They're watching what is going on in Ukraine, understanding that they're next. And so they are going to do anything that they can, including crashing your economies and destroying your infrastructure and blaming it on other countries, just so that they can retain power and insulate themselves from a level of justice that we all know is coming and has never before been witnessed in the history of the world, outside of maybe the Great Flood. So please understand that what's going on with the war in Europe is going to be a little tougher before it gets better. I put out an advisory on the channel today, simply reminding those patriots in Europe and those patriots that are connected to family and friends in Europe to prepare themselves for a very short and difficult period of time. I think we all could stand to be preparing for a short and difficult period of time, even in the United States. Even if we return President Trump to office publicly, say tomorrow or a week from now, when that occurs, there will be an upheaval period where the bastions, the very last bastions that have been saved to be publicly outed in real time, will pull out every stop possible and to attempt to delay the inevitable. When the American election is returned, the deep state around the world will be completely finished. A good deal, I know that we've kind of come off of the our little intel discussion a moment ago. We're segueing more into just some basic points of view here for those that are just coming in or just tuning in, or if you're wondering where we're at here. I'm known to go off on tangents. Sorry. Anyway, when the American election is returned to the correct winner, the deep state will be completely finished. A big part of the operation that we've been dealing with, or that we've been living through, that has had to happen is the patriots in the militaries around the world have needed time to identify all of the traitors at all of the levels of society. That includes traitors within their own ranks that could cause serious operational harm at later points down the road. We have seen several militaries publicly oust members of their own guard, um, and not small, you know, not small subcontinent militaries either. I mean, the United States Armed Forces has done this now. Chinese Armed Forces has done this. The Russian Armed Forces identified a whole litany of traitors against the Kremlin and apprehended them earlier this year. A big part of this operation is ensuring that our house is completely clean before we take things to the general public. And so that is what we have been doing, or continuing to do. As I've reported over the last 4 weeks, I think that we're absolutely near that end point where we have a sufficient amount of awakened individuals in the world, paired with a sufficient amount of assurance on our side that any operational steps that have to be taken from here on out will go smoothly. And so with that kind of understanding about where we're at least with Europe and how some of this is going to affect us around the world, I'm going to give you a little bit of a breakdown, or excuse me, we're going to get to a breakdown here in a second. I'm going to expound a little bit on what I had shared with TruthSocial regarding China yesterday, and then we're going to get into breaking down some POTUS 45 comms, one of my all-time favorite activities to do. The commander-in-chief is sometimes extremely loud with the comms and sometimes necessarily subtle. Today, I believe it was loud. But like I said, we're going to go through this together here. So, expounding first on China. Excuse me. If you recall the first rally, I believe it was in Pennsylvania, in Scranton, when POTUS 45 gave his speech, his remarks, his endorsements, and then made the public statement for the first time at one of his rallies: China with Taiwan is next. And we decoded at that point some very loud hints about the operation in Taiwan to begin clean out of DUMBs and trafficking systems in that area of the world. That operation has been ongoing ever since that rally. It was the public go ahead from 45 to the Q Patriot Alliance, essentially speaking for the United States, and that operation began. Apparently, in that period of time in China, the Chinese economy was shifted, and the bulk of their consumer goods and textiles factories that dot the landscape in central and western China were repurposed to make wartime equipment, weaponry, support gear, things of that nature. I don't have any other information about what is going on inside China, or what has happened since the coup and counter coup situation that happened with Chinese President Xi. What I can say is that the operation to clean up Taiwan will not be a long drawn out conflict like Ukraine. It will be fire and fury, and it will be very fast. I have made the statement before, and I stand by this statement, that the operation will be over between 30 and 45 hours in. In other words, it will happen so fast that the Taiwanese military and armed forces will simply have to stand themselves down. President Xi is not taking any chances with Chinese lives. There are a number of level 4 biolabs in Taiwan that are just as heinous and have been conducting equally dangerous experimentation with pathogens just as much as the Ukrainian labs that Putin has found. And so, with Taiwan being an island, the trade winds across the seas are of a very big concern for those particular labs. The other thing that's a very big concern is them getting it into the ocean water and allowing those microorganisms to populate themselves on their own and wreak havoc around the world. So the operation to clean up Taiwan publicly must go very fast. And we have a great deal of setup that has to be done along the way. I believe that setup is very nearly complete. But at this time, other than the simple knowledge about the Chinese factories and their repurposing, I have no more information about that in that area of the world. I think we're going to see an extremely interesting series of events as it relates to that area of the world. And I do not believe we have to conduct that particular part of the plan before we return the President of the United States. I'm not sure. I'm not privy to the plan. I am, a humble reporter to you. And I try to do my homework as best I can. So that's not to say that it couldn't happen very quickly before the public return of 45. I just do not know if it's necessary. So that being said, let's move on to our decode tonight. I have saved this actually. I looked at it cursorily earlier and thought a couple things were very interesting, but I have saved the bulk of the decode to walk through it with you all. I have opened myself up in the Tor browser over here, and I have navigated to qalerts.app in both the Tor browser and in Firefox. And so the truth that we have posted by the commander-in-chief, posted at nearly 2 o'clock in the morning on the morning of October the 19th, Wednesday. Very interesting time frame for the president to be up and about and letting us know about his endorsements. So his endorsement states, Harvard educated. So that's the first thing I noticed right there, Harvard. So I'm going to log that mentally as we go searching here. Harvard educated John Gibbs of the great state of Michigan, who beat impeacher, and that's in quotes, Congressman Peter Meyer for the Republican nomination, is a great person and patriot who is doing really well against his radical left Democrat opponent, who is really weak on solving our socialist-inspired problem with violent crime. I encouraged John a long time ago, and he has made me very proud of my choice. Get out and vote for John Gibbs. He will never let you down. So, on its face, this is a really glowing endorsement from the commander-in-chief. I believe that particular meaning, which has to be there for the normies and also for the voting population of the United States as a whole, carries through very clearly. A couple of things I noticed right off the bat, though. We have a reference to Harvard, we have impeacher in quotes, and we have a number of grammatical errors, capitalizations that make absolutely no sense and are very obviously out of place. So we're going to come over here. We're going to look at the timestamp, the capitalizations, and we're going to see if we can cross over any subject matter from the content of the truth. Timestamp 0157 Eastern Date Time. Q drop 157 reads like this. What is a key? What is a key used for? What is a guard? What is a guard used for? Who unlocked the door of all doors? Was it pre-planned? Do you believe in coincidences? What is information? Who controls the release of information? Who has all of the information? Who disseminates information? What is the MSM? Who controls the MSM? Who really controls the MSM? Why are we made to believe the MSM are the only credible news sources? Who controls the MSM? Who really controls the MSM? Why are we made to believe the MSM are the only credible news sources? Why is this relevant? Why are non-MSM platforms cast as conspiracy and or non-credible? Why are non-MSM platforms cast as conspiracy and or non-credible? What happens when an entity and or individual accumulates power? Define corruption. Wealth equals power, power equals influence, influence equals control. Rinse and repeat. What power of influence was recently discovered specifically regarding the 2016 election? How much power of influence does Twitter, FB, Reddit, etc. have in influencing the minds of people? Has the stranglehold of the MSM been diminished? What is open source? What has become blatantly obvious since the election of POTUS? Why would they allow this visibility to occur? Were they not prepared to counter? What miscalculation occurred? What opposite impact did this generate? How did POTUS recognize and invert? What happens when an entity and or individual accumulates power? Define corruption. Define censorship. Define controlled censorship. What action is Twitter taking effective mid-December? What is the purpose of this action? Possible test to understand the public government response? Question mark, and he leaves it off. Q157 also posted in the middle of the morning, 2:29 a.m. exactly on November the 20th, 2017. This is one of the posts that Q puts out there instructing the Anons to dig and dig hard. There are several Q posts that read like this. There are several different individuals who post as Q, as the entity known as Q. It's a movement, not a specific individual. One or more of those individuals has a very big knack for questions leading to answers. You will probably have noticed at different points, I do formats very similar to some of the Q posts when I'm attempting to talk to those of you out there, when I'm attempting to talk to those of you out there who are relatively new or just coming on board to, what in the world's going on here. My savings are on fire. My economy's on fire. My job's on fire. My medical freedom is on fire. My gas tank is on fire. What's going on? So this particular post, while interesting, doesn't tie me back to a whole lot, except we do have there's a very big hint in this post towards the mainstream media, which we've talked a little bit about the mainstream media and the COVID crimes, which they will be forced to report on as part of the operation later. What I did find interesting, if you invert the 157 and 751, come to Q post 751, posted on February 13th, 2018, also in the middle of the night. Almost the exact same timestamp. It was posted at 01:56 Eastern Standard Time instead of 01:57. Operation Merlin, Iran, North Korea, Iran deal funding, Iran, North Korea, T-cells, payoffs, North Korea nuclear, mini, SUC, ICBM, SUC, war engine protection. I believe that this could very well be telling us about what's going on right now with Iran, North Korea, and Ukraine, and that axis of evil that's sort of playing its part. So we're going to come over here to the Tor browser, Operation Merlin. The very first result, you don't even have to be on the Tor browser to connect. Operation Merlin was a United States covert operation under the Clinton administration to provide Iran with a flawed design for a component of a nuclear weapon, ostensibly in order to delay their nuclear weapons program or to frame Iran, or to create a device that is uncontrollable and rogue. Operation Merlin backfired when the CIA's, this is from Wikipedia, when the CIA's Russian contact noticed flaws in the schematics and told the Iranian nuclear scientists. Instead of crippling the program, the book alleges, Operation Merlin accelerated it by providing useful information. Once the flaws were identified, plans could be compared with other sources, such as those to have been provided to the Iranians by A.Q. Khan. Operation Merlin, an operation to supply Iran with the schematics to a nuclear device, claiming that we were doing so we were giving them flawed schematics, which were conveniently found out to be flawed right as they were delivered. Fascinating. T cells. Come over here, double check some meanings on that too. T cells are white blood cells that are the killer cells. They are your immune system cells. Over here. They play a central role in the adaptive immune system response, and they can be distinguished by other lymphocytes by the presence of a T cell receptor on the cell lining. Interesting. There will be brief moments of quiet while we research together here, friends. I am very much still with you. War engine. I'm going to look that term up. We know that the engine of war is money. Money does offer protection to these fools. Interesting. War engine. A real-time strategy video game created by Cave Dog Entertainment, a subdivision of Humongous Entertainment, released on September 26, 1997 by GT Interactive from Microsoft. 2 expansion packs were later released. After the closure of the Cave Dog Entertainment in 1999, intellectual property fell to Info Games. Fascinating. Coming back to this from POTUS, we're going to talk a little bit about this. There's a very good possibility what POTUS is telling us here is to keep our eyes on Iran, North Korea, and the whole developing nuclear conflict. Uranium One is a big reason why all of us are here at this point in time and at this place at this point in time right here, right now. Uranium One was the deal done by the Obama administration, spearheaded by Hillary Clinton, to send uranium to Russia, to the Russian military industrial complex, but steal about 20% of it and send it everywhere else that they wanted it to go. Nuclear terrorism is just as dangerous as biological terrorism. These cabalist players at the very top are guilty of both, many, many times over, as a matter of fact. Understanding that, it should not be a surprise that we have a comm from POTUS here that could very well be telling us to pay attention to the nuclear terrorism aspect with the Iran deal and how that particular deal played back with North Korea and then Ukraine. We're going to do a decode now. We're going to look at these capital letters that are out of place. Nomination. is capitalized. Person is capitalized. So NP, well, I'm going to say that Patriot is capitalized for just emphasis. So nomination, person, radical left Democrat. Let's see here. Socialist, endorsed. All right. So we're going to break this down. N, P, R, L, D, or RL, excuse me, S, E. Come over here to our gematria calculator. P, R, L, S, E. R, L, S, E. Calculate the gematria. The simple gematria comes out to 84. Okay. 45 is just the best, everyone. If you plug in the gematria for the letters we were just talking about, it comes out to a simple gematria of 84. The answers, I didn't even have to scroll down the page. Some of the answers on this page: where we go one, we go all, fake news, Sunday, which will be just a few days away, Arizona, calamity. Scroll down just a little bit and see if there is anything more that's interesting to review. Midnight. Okay, so I love when decodes seem to give us the answers that we're actually looking for, and we don't have to stretch to reach them. I love you is on there as well. So I think I don't think I know the capitalizations in this particular truth from President 45 pointing us to a little bit of comfort. We're being told about the fake news. We're also being pointed towards, Q. All roads lead to Q was a recent gematria decode that we did. The most interesting one, and we're going to spend a moment talking about this. I have no information about today or the rest of this week as it pertains to events that may or may not be happening. I have an analysis, kind of like an insider's impression, an opinion of how things could go down. I'm not given information about mission critical activities, movements, or actions that need to happen before they've occurred. That being said, we had Kash Patel earlier put a truth out on TruthSocial that where he misspelled Rod Rosenstein for Roth, R-O-F, Rosenstein. Roth Rosenstein comes out to the same 84 simple gematria and also comes out to midnight. Here we have President Trump telling us in the early morning hours of today, before the day really began for most of us out there, pointing out in this particular truth Harvard, which was implicitly involved in the COVID crimes. We have capitalizations that are just completely nonsensical and don't make any sense. And those capitalizations happen to agree with the same gematria from what could be an intentional misspelling from Kash. I'm choosing to believe that it is, simply because Kashyap Patel is mentioned by Q. And so that tells me that Kashyap Patel is aware of Q and the greater movement for Q and is communicating with us in his misspelling. And so we now have the commander-in-chief and Kash Patel with a gematria agreement that's pretty strong. So coming back to today, in the next few days, I don't know what may or may not be happening for us. I do know that the Patriots are in control. We've got this. And we're going to go ahead and segue for a moment. I didn't even get as deep into this decode as I wanted to get tonight. Normally I get over into the Tor browser and we look at the hidden wiki and we go hop around the forums for a while, but it occurs to me that I could keep you all with me tonight for probably 2 hours doing that. We're going to segue into kind of some closing remarks here. The operation that we are all living through is difficult to explain to the individuals that are not willing to make those tiny little internal leaps of faith and trust. You have individuals out there, I have individuals out there in my own circle who will not examine or evaluate something if there is not a document that they can hold in their hand or find on Google, and not some random engine that doesn't have any credibility. It has to be Google. Those individuals, a great many of them, are only going to awaken when they have the slap in the face, and the slap is coming. The financial system is in an implosion all around the world. The fuel and the energy infrastructure that we've created for this earth, or that they've created, I should say, for this earth, is being dismantled and repurposed, and throttled out, the corruption being throttled out of it at the very top. We have the business sector, which is controlled by less than 14 companies all around the entire earth. Those 14 companies have been cleaned and are being cleaned, and in some cases have been cleaned, and those reverberative effects are coming down the pike. We have placed individuals in media and in government all around the world so that we could call upon them in this moment. We are truly living an amazing time in this world. It is my sincere hope for all of you, especially the new ones, if you have come in, keep the faith. We are so close. We are so close with them. Just today, we had a decision come down from the CDC that affects every man, woman, and child in the United States of America. A great many of us out there, myself included, are impacted personally by this decision. And I may now have 72 hours after the final decision is made tomorrow. I may be presented with a 72-hour period where I have to arrange something completely different for my entire work life. My little one won't be participating in any sort of system that requires these death shots. That being said, and I guess I bring that up to tell each of you that I'm not insensitive or detached from the suffering that goes on. I live it with you. We don't know what we're going to do as a little family unit as it pertains to that. But what I do know is that by participating in that decision in a period of time where devolution of government has occurred and military law is currently being administered at the top chain for the United States of America, the CDC has now made itself an enemy of the Republic and of the military, and they will be on the list of agencies now to be cleaned out with force. We are setting the stage, both in the United States and around the world, with the COVID crimes. We're setting the stage to bring it all down on them all at once. We have to allow the dominoes to fall one right after the other. There cannot be one that gets lodged or stuck or doesn't come down correctly. And so I am not insensitive to the suffering out there. I am living it with each of you. But I want to remind you that we win, and we win big. There is a school of thought, and I think it's a reasonable and justifiable school of thought that says, but at what cost have we won? And I can appreciate that also. I would meet that thought with the answer, what would the cost have been to have done nothing? So At the end of the day, we win this, they lose this. Keep your sanity, keep your faith. A number of these operations necessary for the delivery of justice have already happened behind the scenes. It is just simply a matter now of creating in the general awareness of all of mankind around the earth, everywhere, the acceptance, or excuse me, the reality of what occurred, and to bring them around gently enough, but firmly enough for them to latch on to their new understanding, and then allow the great patriots and their governments, their militaries, their societies and communities, their law enforcement agencies all around their nations, to be okay with them going forward with the ultimate cleansing of our world. We are headed in that direction. I'm glad that each of you has stuck with us and stuck with it to this point. I'm extremely thankful for the newcomers who are first waking up at this point in the struggle. It's not an easy decision to come around at this time. There's a lot of pride that has to be dealt with, and there's a lot of self-discovery and reflection and introspection and inner growth that has to drive that sort of a decision. And a big kudos to each of you for having the courage and the fortitude to do that at this point. You know, we're going to support one another as we go through this. We're going to support the sleepers who are still sleeping even now, and we're going to support those friends and family who excommunicated us and spat on us and barred us from events because they were simply afraid. MK Ultra was and is the largest and most successful psychological thought control operation ever deployed upon humankind. Its basis lies in fear. Most people in what we would call, quote, developed countries are subject to this fear programming at levels that they don't even understand for their own selves. We are continually rediscovering this as we go through this movement, that when things get, a magnitude worse and another magnitude worse and another magnitude worse, we have seen, all of you out there, I'm sure, have seen just how resistant and entrenched this sort of fear-based programming is. The Q tells us that when we're done, 90% of the population of the world will be on board, with the Patriots doing what has to be done. They will also be okay with understanding and moving forward with those harsh realities that are difficult to swallow. So rest well. Your vindication is coming. I wish each of you peace this evening. I wish you all prosperity as we go through the redefinition of the financial world as we know it. Don't allow yourselves to be swayed from the overall knowing that at the end of the walk through the Red Sea is a wonderful land that we are being guided towards by the Creator. And so with that, everyone, this is SGAnon. It's been good to be with you again tonight. I look forward to being with you again in the next few days. Stay buckled up. We've got a lot of comms that have come down the pike that really seem to point to very interesting results. Be safe, be well, be of good courage. Love wins this war, and so do all of us. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.